Hi everyone, welcome to this module on boot volume. My name is Rohit Rai and I'm part of the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure team. In this module, let's look at what boot volumes are. A compute instance is launched using OS image stored on a remote boot volume. We looked at this earlier. So let's say you have a compute instance here. You have this concept of boot volume and block volumes. And boot volume is where your OS is there. So this is the boot. And then you have block volumes here. And a block volume is where you would keep your application data, and boot volume is where you would keep your operating system. Both of them are form of boot volume is a special kind of a block volume, and we'll talk more about this in the block volume module, but just gives you a quick understanding of what a boot volume is. Boot volume is created automatically and associated with an instance until you terminate the instance. Makes sense because that's where your operating system is booted from. Uh, you can scale your instances to larger shape by using boot volumes. You can preserve the boot volume when you terminate that compute instance. You get that option, and they are only terminated when you manually delete them. If you don't terminate it when you are, um, let's say, terminating your instance. And then the other thing is boot volume cannot be detached from a running instance. Again, makes sense because this is where your operating system resides. You can do things like manual backup, assign backup policies, create clones. We'll talk about all of these in the block volume module. But boot volume is nothing but a special kind of a block volume. So everything you could do with block volume, you could do with boot volumes. Now with OCI, when you create an instance, you can specify a custom boot volume size. Um, so for Linux, the default is 46.6, but as you can see in this picture, we could go to 100 gig, right? For Windows, it's 256 default, but you could go to a bigger shape. You could go all the way up to 32 terabyte because that's the maximum size supported by block volume. Now there are a couple of things which are different between a custom image and a boot volume. Because if you recall, the goal of a custom image is to create a gold image, right? So gold image meaning you have the operating system and all the configurations, customizations, etc. Boot volume is the operating system, right, where the operating system resides. So sort of they're trying to do the same thing, but what are the difference between custom images versus like using a boot volume and taking a backup of that boot volume? Because if you make changes to the boot volume where your operating system is, you could do a backup, right, and you could use that to spin and create other instances. So a few things to keep in mind. With custom images, we saw this in the previous module. You can do import and export, right, across regions and across tenancies. There is no cost associated. So you store them in the object storage, but there is no cost which you have to pay. The downtime is the instance shuts down. In the previous module, we saw that the instance shut down for a couple of minutes, less than a minute actually, and then there are some limits which you have to work with. Now, in case of boot volume backup, you're doing something similar. You have a boot volume, you can make changes, you can take a backup. First thing is it doesn't require a downtime, so you are running, and then you do a boot volume backup. Um, the advantage is it preserves the entire state of your running operating system, right? Because again, there is no downtime. If you're running it, you just take a backup. The downside is there's a cost associated with the amount of object storage you use, right? So if these images are big, of course, you're paying that. And then the second one is, well, while the instance is running, you get the entire state. It also creates a crash consistent backup. So it's always a good practice to shut down your instance and then take a backup, right? Because that way, if you want to you're running like SharePoint or Exchange or something, it's not a good idea to take a backup while your application is running. So with that, let me quickly jump to the console and show you a quick demo of where the boot volumes are. So in the previous module, we were creating using custom image, we were doing an export. Let's see if this process is done or still going on. Okay, it looks like it's still going on. So right here, you can see the boot volumes, right? And if I scroll here, I can see bunch of the boot volumes which I have created in this account, right? And some of them are running like this. The instances which are running, the web instances running, the Bastion, the database, etc. running. So I can see a compute the boot volume. I just created this instance a few minutes back. It's still running, right? It's a Linux instance, so you can see the boot volume is 47 gig in size, right here, right? And I could do a bunch of things like assign a backup policy. I could change the encryption key, bring your own keys. I could do all that, right? Right here, you can see the attached instance, and you can see that detached from instance is grayed out. I cannot detach it because the instance is still running, and it says, it's in a running state. And I could do things like in transit encryption and a bunch of other things, right? One thing I want to show you is creating a boot volume backup. So I can come here and I can create a boot volume backup here. Boot backup one. And I would say, it's a full backup. I could do incremental backup or I could do full backup. And there you go. I could create a backup of this boot volume. So it's similar to creating a custom image, but now I'm doing the boot volume backup as you saw in the previous slide. There's also boot volume clone, and I could come here and I could do the clone here, right? The thing is, clone and backup are mutually exclusive, meaning only one can run at a time. So I could not run both of them at the same time. So if I come here and I click this create clone, it would give me an error that there is currently a backup operation in progress. So once my backup operation is done, I could come in and create a clone. So if I go back here, it looks like my backup is still going on, and right now you can see the backup size. It's a 47 gig boot volume. So the you can it will take a backup here. Now a couple of other things to see. If I go into my boot volumes, these are the boot volumes which have been terminated. And when I was terminating my instance, probably I went and terminated these boot volumes. If I want to quickly show you that experience, I have a bunch of these instances running. Probably I'm not using this one. So I would say terminate this instance. And when I do that, it says permanently delete the attached boot volume. By default, it keeps it. But if I click this link here and terminate this instance, now my boot volume, which was associated with this instance, is also going to be deleted. So if I go back to my boot volume link and scroll all the way down, this one says available because it's in the process of getting deleted, terminated. But if I refresh this page, it should be grayed out. I think it's still going on, but it would, few seconds you would see that this is grayed out because I gave a command to terminate by boot volume. If I click on the boot volume backups, you can see the backups, the one which I just took. You can see the backup here, date of 12th November, right? I just took this backup. So hopefully this was a quick, let me just go back and see if the boot volume is, okay, the boot volume should have been deleted. Let me just go back to my instance because we did say the permanently deleted. um, so hopefully this gives you a quick demo. It's still in the process of terminating, so that's why it was sometimes it takes a few more seconds to terminate the instance. So hopefully this gives you a quick understanding of boot volumes, what they do. Operating system is stored there. You could do a boot volume backup, similar to custom images, some pros and cons. And we'll talk again, whatever you can do with block volumes, you could do with boot volumes. It's a special kind of a block volume. We'll talk more about boot volumes when we discuss the block volume module. Thank you for joining this lecture. If you have time, please join the next lecture where we talk about instance pools, auto scaling configuration, etc. Thank you.